Treason and Patriotism in Ancient Greece by Anton Hermann Kraust. The saying, "it is all Greek to me," is used when something doesn't make any sense. This is in reference to Greek history not making any sense. During the period Kraust is analyzing, Greek has a massive amount of wealth, and where wealth is, so too is evil. Kraust describes the uprisings of political parties and groups in Greek old boys clubs. These groups often went at one another and created not only political strife, but partisan vendettas and hatred, and according to Alcaeus, who was a Greek poet, the plotters and killers just did it for the love of the game.
I love the game. I love the hustle, man.
Let us drink and reel, for Marcellus is dead. But why do people who are vying for power make groups and then stab one another in the back? It's because it's easier to have a bunch of people stab someone in the back than have one guy stab someone in the chest. Now, even before an individual became a citizen of Athens, they had to, as a rule, become a member of some kinship organization. And I will say I'm not Greek, so my pronunciations will be off. But these organizations included Fratria, the Genos, the Phile, and the Oikos. Basically, to have been accepted into some other group before becoming a real citizen was a prerequisite. In Attica, Kraust and Plato, well, not at the same time, but Kraust cites Plato, citing a concept called friendship, which I'm putting the air quotes around, because the Greeks never actually had Instagram and they never had anybody who could reply to all the reels that they sent, so they wouldn't know what real friendship was yet. In actuality, the quotes are put into the quote anyway, around the word friendship, because these groups were not really based on friendship, they were based on material and sensual gain, which is quoted later on. The function of these groups was to find like-minded citizens and unify them. Kraust says that in Homeric times, the most illustrious warriors united into groups where they would have the same enemies and the same friends. As I stated before, in Athens, before you were a citizen, you were in a clique, and Polybius thought the same. He said that these associations were meant for purely material and sensual satisfactions. And funnily enough, another democracy that we're familiar with has also adopted this notion of cliquey, same-think groups that devolve into focus instruments for purely material gain. I'm not going to say what they are. Over time, the general consideration of the citizens was that it was more important to be within their chosen friendship group rather than their local political scene. Being one with the city meant being one with the groups that ran the city, so their focus became on the groups that ran the city. Several times throughout that history, the social groups combined for a common political action. There it is. Thucydides says this about it: "The cities were thus torn asunder. By the clever cunning of their leaders' designs and the monstrous cruelty of their vengeance, kindred ties became less of a bond than party or club." Now, for us, this seems completely insane. When it comes to the unified success of one's country, city-state, or whatsoever, friendship shouldn't run it, right? I mean, surely the repetition of singular support of friends and aristocratic oligarchical figures wouldn't continue to happen after democracy has developed so far. Could you imagine the leader of Athens, like Cleon or something, selling his buddy Thucydides' histories on the floor of the Acropolis? I mean, that's unimaginable. The same passage from Thucydides mentions that the leaders of the cities merely paid lip service to the common interest, while in reality they made their people the victims. And I think he has a point. He should become like a teacher or historian or something. In an example of the aforementioned leader of the city paying lip service and making the people their victims, Kraust cites Alcibiades after an incident at the Hermae. See, I got Alcibiades right, but I nearly messed up incident, which is just a normal word. Now, Alcibiades did something at the Hermae. I didn't look it up because I wanted to finish the article as fast as possible, but whatever he did was told to him as being participating in a treasonous plot against democracy. So in response, he fled to Sparta, openly turned against his homeland, and then told Sparta how to best hurt Athens. I looked it up. Apparently he just changed his political leanings several times and was a huge proponent for a very aggressive military stance and campaign that failed disastrously. Now, he justified this by saying quite a lot, but I've selected the sentences I find most conducive to our understanding. He said, "The political party hostile to me was not you. My patriotism, too, I don't keep at a time when I am being wronged, but only while I enjoyed my civil rights and security." Which, whatever, I guess. I mean, that might be a bit of an overreaction. It would be like me being president and not liking another president, so I ally with my historically greatest enemy. Kraust follows this by pointing out that despite grave dangers being inflicted upon Athens at every waking moment, internal city-based disputes continued. Without fail, one of these phratrias would be willing to sell out the city to the enemy in order to gain political hegemony. Kraus uses several more examples to further his point. The conspiracy of Cylon in 632, where Megarian mercenaries helped Cylon's club members seize Athens. Isagoras and his supporters calling upon Spartans to suppress Cleisthenes and his democratic reforms. Hippias in 490 with the Persians at Marathon to regain political control. The Athenian oligarchs on the eve of the Battle of Plataea in 489. The Spartans, who were also invited by a group of Athenian oligarchs to march on Athens before the Battle of Tanagra on 457. 431 and 430, when Melesippus, the Spartan ambassador who returned under strict guard, was not allowed to speak to any Laconian oligarchs. The incident in Herme. The revolt in 411 and 410. And the dozens of incidents between 404 and 403, when Lysander compelled Athenians to ratify a treaty and hand over government to the 30 tyrants. And following that, what seems to be Kraus' favorite example of patriotism being forgotten in the face of material gain, Xenophon. Xenophon abandoned Athens during her time of greatest need for superficial notoriety and considerable plunder with a group of adventurers who had become lost in Persia. After some delay, he returned to the country and was punished for his treason. These punishments included being exiled to a beautiful country estate. He also was not touched, or accosted, or assaulted, or attacked, or anything by anyone until a war drove him away from his country, in which Athens offered to forgive him and allow him back into the city-state. He rejected that and moved to Corinth, which was historically the enemy of Athens. One of my favorite sentences from the following page is when Kraus says this: "Political parties, it appears, would rather see the loss of national independence to a foreign power than the triumph of the opposing political faction." This in no way strikes me as resembling any facet of current democracy. All this being said, Kraus states that patriotism must have been completely and pointedly different in Greece than it is in America. The Greek fraternities, clubs, and friendships all vied for power so intensely that despite clear indicators things were spiraling out of their control, they continued to be instrumental in the ultimate ruin of the city. Kraus doesn't say whether the oligarchs or Democrats were right here, as both adopted very similar measures for securing their continued power. Massive exiles or straight-up murder were definitely on the table. With all the examples provided, I've concluded that Greek patriotism was not the undying support for the betterment of one's city-state. It was a loyalty to the friendship group one had for the sole purpose of control, and thereafter, once power is seized, the controlling party would better Athens by making it conform to their ideas of betterment.